So over time, I've kind of realized that life in some ways kind of like a roguelike game. And you know, that's not a very like common term, at least if you're not a gamer. And I'm not trying to be like one of those, oh, you're only gonna know this if you're a real gamer. However, it's like, in a way, life is like a roguelike. And like roguelikes are basically these types of games where a lot of the structure of these games involves runs in quotes. And like each run is supposed to be like, better than the last in a way. And the whole point of roguelike games, or at least roguelites, not roguelikes, if that makes sense. Roguelikes are kind of like a subgenre of roguelike games where you kind of get progressively stronger each run until you're like super cracked out of your mind in a way. If you know, if you can visualize that. Um, but yeah, life is kind of like a roguelite in a way. Each year you go on and gain this experience, and in a way, it's sort of like unlocking new power ups and upgrades to your character. And the next year is kind of like a new run, if that makes sense. Every year you get to start over and do better in life with the new experience that you just gained, which is kind of like your power ups. And even though you may fail, it's not like you can't get better over time. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with in a way. People tend to not necessarily, what's the way to put it, acknowledge the experience that they've gained and how they can use it to keep pushing towards a better and better run until you beat the game. What is beating the game in this instance? Well, there is no beating the game. You can't really necessarily win at life unless you're just happy all the time. Which in that case, then you get bored. So are you really winning necessarily? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think there's any ending to this roguelike that we call life. I mean, life in this roguelike instance is kind of just like an endless game. You constantly keep making run after run until you die. Until your life ends, and then you can't make another run because you've, I guess, exhausted everything and you've kind of gotten to the highest level that you can get. You've unlocked every single upgrade and power up that you possibly could, and there's just nothing left to, pursue. So you just kind of are at that level, and that's the highest level you're going to get to. I think what would be good for everybody in life is if they really kind of took a list, and not a physical list, it doesn't have to be anything you write down, but just kind of like a mental acknowledgement, if you will, about all of the things that they've gained. People don't look at what they've gained, they only look at what they've lost for the most part. And I could be wrong, but I attribute a lot of that to, you know, bad things tend to have a lot more of a impact on people than good things do. I mean, good things always provide like a very happy memory or whatever, but bad things tend to have lasting consequences and live in your mind rent free for quite some time. And that's why things like trauma are so common and whatnot. But yeah, that mental list of power ups and upgrades that you've finally gotten, it'd be really cool and I think really useful for people if they were to, you know, look at those things and be like, yeah, this is what I'm going into the next run with. This is what I'm working with for the next round. And I think having an acknowledgement of where your power ups like where you're standing in terms of power ups and upgrades, helps you kind of conduct the next run or year better. New Year's is coming up at the time of saying all of this. And I think it's really important to acknowledge where you're, like, how far you've come and what you have, because it helps you allocate what you need to, and it keeps you from going blind or feeling lost because you're either underutilizing or overutilizing your resources mentally, physically, and all of those aspects. Like, for example, if you don't really take the time to, like, realize how far you've come when it comes to progressing in a new skill per se, then you kind of undermine yourself or overmine, like, or I don't even know if overmining is a word, but we'll roll with it. You kind of undermine or overmine yourself. Either you become arrogant and cocky and you kind of overestimate your abilities to do things, and it's not quite up to snuff like you think it is. And usually that can be followed up by a very, very tragic rude awakening that sort of pushes you off the pedestal you put yourself on, and then you fall back to the ground and kind of break a few bones, if you will. Or you undermine yourself and you don't really see the pile of resources that you have. I guess a better analogy for overshooting yourself would be like if you're building a ladder as you're climbing up it, and then all of a sudden you run out of wood to build the ladder with and you just fall off because, you're continuously climbing without any material to keep climbing with. Or underselling yourself or underestimating your ability, you kind of just sort of stand there, or you climb a little bit even though you have the whole ladder, like you have a bunch of resources to build this ladder with that you're not using for whatever reason. I think it's important to know what you have so that you're able to use it. Like, for example, in all of the, like, in the, like, aforementioned contexts, it's pretty one-dimensional. It's not like, it can't really be applied to every issue. Maybe, like, skills and whatnot. Like, if you're an artist that overestimates your ability, and you've been told, and you start doing like high dollar commission work, and all of a sudden people are telling, like, nobody buys it because objectively your art isn't the best, then it's sort of not too practical. It's not too applicable in a normal context. I mean, people constantly will buy things that they find to be nice looking, even if they're not the best looking to other people. So I guess there's a flaw in that mindset, and I'm willing to admit that I'll be wrong, because of course humility is a very important sort of thing to consider. But I like to think that maybe what I'm saying isn't complete BS, but what do I know? You know? In a way, this sort of roguelike that we're all running around in, it can really turn out great for all of us. And it's just a matter of allocating your resources properly. You know, you get to, in a roguelike game, you're going to be facing waves of enemies usually. And like these enemies are going to keep constantly attacking you. They're going to keep getting stronger because you're strong. It's gonna seem like like enemies that are seemingly overwhelming at first when you first start playing this game are gonna be like easy pickings for you later down the line. And that power creep is what makes me love roguelike games. Like, I love the feeling of getting stronger and then suddenly things that were like too great for me before just being a complete sneeze afterwards. I feel like you just can't beat that feeling, man. It is so great. and it's like, it might be, some kind of weird megalomaniac complex that I have going on that I might not, think about or something. I don't know. But I've always admired that feeling. And I'm sure others do too. But, then and then like, you're thinking that you're like super powerful and whatnot, and you come to those like enemies that are finally on your level, and suddenly things are getting like actually difficult to keep up, and you're not properly trained for those sort of things. Usually that's where people will give up, especially if they die in said roguelike. A lot of people don't want to go out and are afraid of falling down and retrying things. If you decide that you're going to give up and, stop doing things and like stop doing it, then you'll never be able to get strong enough to defeat those enemies and make them just as much of a sneeze as like the lower level enemies were, you know? It's like in Minecraft when you find a boss that ends up like completely wiping you because you weren't very well prepared. Maybe your sword breaks in the middle of your fight and you run out of like golden apples or whatever. Then you die and you respawn and all of your stuff is gone. That's where at least for me, since I'm terrible at Minecraft, I'll probably log off and not really want to play that world anymore because it's like I've lost everything and I can't really get that back very easily. It's sort of like if I were to have taken the stride to build everything back up and knowing that like with the experience that I know of, you know, make sure my sword's durability is on par or, as good as it can be, and maybe stock up more on healing potions and golden apples, then the next time I would have fought that boss, I probably would have won or, you know, gotten the drops from it or whatever. It's all about trying again because you're stronger. Trying again because you're stronger. I think that's a bar, low key. That's kind of a banger. Trying harder because you're stronger. Or trying again because you're stronger. Whoopsies. If that's what I said before, I have no idea. It's all about that because, dude, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to get back up and keep on trying. And you're gonna be stronger regardless. Each run, every year that passes in your life is never an opportunity to give up. It's only an opportunity to just take what you know and apply it in those situations that you're familiar with. Because after all, you are truly like a monster compared to what you were before. You look at your level 1 self and you're like, man, I used to be so weak and pathetic and useless. But you forget to imagine that level 1 you is still you. That level 1 you probably thought that your level 0 self was so weak and pathetic compared to them. You probably thought you were at the top of the world at level 1, smashing down like the lowest of the low enemies. And you were having fun with this game, and then you finally hit your first roadblock. And you might have gotten through it and gotten to level 2. And then, like, at the end of it, you level up to level 2, and you're like, hey, these enemies that I was fighting, the enemies that I was fighting aren't as hard anymore. I'm kind of strong enough to keep up with them and even defeat them. And then all of a sudden you keep, slashing down these enemies, and all of a sudden you're unlocking these new abilities and talents that you've never even thought you would have been able to like achieve, but you just achieved them without even knowing. A lot of people kind of see progress as this sort of measurable and tangible thing that's just like a number. You can't really see progress as anything tangible because it's intangible. You won't know when you progressed until you look at it like in retrospect. And that's the thing. nobody sees, nobody like, or I won't say nobody because that's very, fixed language, but I'll say a lot of people don't really take the time to look at things from a retrospective angle. Or if they do look at it from a retrospective angle, usually they sort of lament the retrospective angle instead of seeing it as a sort of indicator of how far you've come, necessarily. I think, if everybody adopted that mindset, and I'm not saying that my mindset is like the biggest and baddest of them all, and, my mindset is the one to rule all mindsets, but I like to think that, if anybody's out there and needs this advice, or not really advice, but me yapping, then I'd like to be able to help them in some way. Even if I make a very small difference, I like helping people, and that's my biggest thing. I've always liked the feeling of being needed for people and whatnot. So, if this advice even scratches the surface of what you would consider useful words, then I'd really love to know. So, if you'd like to leave a comment or even subscribe, because I'll probably keep doing this since I'm a self-proclaimed D1 yapper, as I've been told by myself, my friends, my family members, etc. I just like talking to people, and even if my 2 cents isn't worth anything, which I mean 2 cents normally isn't, I still want to put my change in the change jar because I like my change in the change jar. Sue me, I guess. I'm probably not in the place to give advice because I'd never take my own advice, but people are always like, coaches don't play. And I'm I can be the coach and not play, guys. But it's sort of like, looking at things from an outside angle definitely gives you a different perspective. Like, you don't, when your friends are arguing versus when you're in an argument, it's, you get, like, everything is so much clearer when your friends are arguing because you're in, like, unbiased, because you're not trying to spare anybody's feelings in that situation, because, or you're trying to, like, pad anything, because, when you're in the situation, you're obviously trying to save your ass a little bit and keep yourself from feeling the hurt, or from admitting you were wrong if you're a little bit prideful. And I think pride kind of sucks sometimes, but that's probably a topic for another video. Anyways, back to trying to round robin back to the point. Roguelikes in life are kind of like connected in a way, in my opinion. It is literally just a mimicry of life. You get these new skills and abilities that you never thought you would before, and you become something really powerful if you take the time to actually acknowledge those powers and use them properly. You have the power to do basically whatever it is that you've gained that you've given yourself the power to do. If you decide that you were going to study a language, then at the end of the year when you're starting your new run, then you've just given yourself proficiency points in a new language at next year. You allot yourself powers that you want, you allot yourself every power that you want to have. And that's really cool, okay? I mean, if I decided that I was going to practice drawing every single day, 2024 or 2025, then suddenly I would, at the tail end of 2025, going into 2026, I would have proficiency points in drawing. People love to say that they want to do things or that they'd like to do things, but at the end of the day, you allot yourself everything that you want to do. If you want to get better at drawing, then you have to start drawing. So when you go to the next run, obviously, you're gonna have that experience with drawing, which means that you will have, from the perspective of wanting to know how to draw, then you'll have known how to draw when you come up into the next run. That's so cool. isn't it? Anyways, closing remarks, because I don't want to make this video too long. I just kind of wanted to put something out there because this topic has been boiling on my mind for so long recently, and I'm just like, I need to make a YouTube video. And now I'm really like deciding that I want to do it again. Like I feel like I'm in the prime time to do it, so I'm going to do it because I can. And and to apply this to apply this passion that I'm feeling to my original point. I may not be the greatest at editing or making YouTube videos or, pushing myself to the algorithm. By 2026, if I keep doing this, then I'll know all that stuff. I'll have those new powers and abilities that I've wanted, that I'm yearning for right now. I'll have those powers because I practiced and I put in the pain and I killed those enemies and got all the way up to the point where I couldn't really fight anymore, and I ended up kind of crashing and burning. I'll probably have some hiccups on the way, and eventually 2026 is going to roll around and I'm going to be like, yeah, I did that. I'm cool. I'm powerful now. I can easily breeze through this. Life can be great, and hate it or love it, you can definitely do whatever you allot yourself to do. And I know that's cheesy and corny and everybody says it, but it's low-key kind of true. I can't stress how much I kind of like hated that I listened to old advice I was given, and I'm sort of like, man, oh man, I really wish that I'd listened to this person and actually heeded their advice instead of just taking it for some generic nonsense that adults spew at people. Because now I'm kind of realizing that they were right, and that maybe, just maybe, their words that I thought were wacky and corny had some sort of substance to them. Just maybe. Because I'm too prideful to admit it. And that's a nice segue into the next video, maybe. Or something. I don't know. Probably. Probably just something that I'll think about from the time of recording this to then, I guess. I'm Green. This is not really my first time with YouTube at all. And yeah, see you guys later. Toodles.